How much human species were there? Around 21. How much remains now? Only 1. But why? How they got extinct? Is it true we were the reason that the remaining got wiped out of existence? And how would it be like if they still lived among us? Only one human species remains today, the Homo sapiens, modern humans. We are the last. Other human species, including the Neanderthals and Denisovans, are now extinct. But for most of our 300,000 years history, we shared this planet with several other human species. The last surviving non-sapiens humans, like Homo floresiensis and Neanderthals, vanished roughly 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. While those species are gone, their DNA lives on. Many modern humans still carry 1% to 2% Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA due to ancient interbreeding. But wait, what made other humans a different species instead of just being a different race? Different skin colors or tribal lifestyles are just small genetic adaptations to environment, not signs of a different species. A different species forms after very long evolutionary separation, causing major biological differences. Ancient humans like Homo neanderthalensis were considered different species because they evolved separately and had noticeably different anatomy, skeletal structure, and genetics. The era we called Stone Age, what time actually we're talking about, and what species lived and survived it. The Stone Age is not a single moment. It is a span of roughly 3.3 million years, from when the first stone tools appear in the fossil record all the way to when humans learned to melt metal. It is divided into 3 phases. The Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age, runs from about 3.3 million years ago to around 12,000 years ago. Then the Mesolithic, which is a transitional period after the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago. And then the Neolithic, the New Stone Age, which ends with the Bronze Age around 3000 BCE. Because the Stone Age was so incredibly long, almost every human species that ever existed lived during it. To give you a sense of scale, all of recorded history, everything we have written down, every civilization, every empire, all of that fits into the last 5,000 years. As the Stone Age transitioned into Bronze Age just around 5,000 years ago. The Stone Age is 3.3 million years long. We have been writing things down for about 0.15% of that time. Here's a list of all 21 human species that were discovered. Every single species on that list is based on physical evidence. You can pause and check if you want, but let's say a few are still debated, either being called a separate species or same as any other one. You don't like to read, do you? That's why I did all the reading for you. Though we can't discuss all the species, let's see who made it until the very late, what they looked like, and what they accomplished. Homo erectus, the marathon runners of evolution. They were the first to master fire and leave Africa. Their brains were significantly larger than earlier ancestors like Homo habilis, eventually reaching about 60–70% of the size of a modern human brain. Famous fossil finds. Java man, discovered in Indonesia in the 1890s. This was the first Homo erectus fossil ever found. Peking man, a collection of fossils found in China during the 1920s that provided extensive evidence of their lifestyle. Turkana boy, an almost complete skeleton found in Kenya, dating back 1.6 million years, which revealed much about their growth and body shape. They are the longest-lived human species, surviving for nearly 2 million years, and they went extinct around 108,000 years ago. Homo floresiensis, the Hobbits. Yeah, you heard right. The Hobbits, but why call them Hobbits? You see, the name was inspired by the works of J.R.R. Tolkien due to their unique physical traits. Their adults were roughly the size of a modern 4-year-old child. They had unusually large, flat feet relative to their short legs, and their brains were about 400 cubic centimeters, roughly one-third the size of ours and similar to a chimpanzee's. Evidence shows that they crafted sophisticated stone tools for hunting and butchering. Well, to your surprise, they hunted stegodon, an extinct pygmy elephant, and also dealt with giant Komodo dragons. Also, they used fire for cooking. Found in Liangbua Cave, Flores, in 2003, a nearly complete skeleton of an adult female. It provided the first proof of their tiny stature and brain size. Proved the hobbits had been small for hundreds of thousands of years, but unfortunately, they also went extinct around 50,000 years ago. Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals. They were highly intelligent, skilled hunters, and our closest extinct human relatives. They had short, stocky bodies and large noses to warm and humidify cold, dry air. Their brains were actually larger than the average modern humans, though shaped differently. They were significantly more muscular and robust than modern humans, Homo sapiens. They cared for the sick and elderly, evidenced by fossils showing healed major injuries. They created jewelry from eagle talons. They were among the first to intentionally bury their dead, sometimes marking graves with flowers or tools. The presence of the FOXP2 gene and a similar hyoid bone suggests they likely had some form of complex speech. Most people of non-African descent carry 1% to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthal fossils are abundant across Europe and the Middle East. Neander Valley Feldhofer 1, found in Germany in 1856, the original Neanderthal that gave the species its name. It was the first time scientists realized there was another type of human, but they also vanished around 40,000 years ago. You are probably thinking, what were we, the Homo sapiens, like? Some kind of overpowered beasts, or maybe fragile as we are today? Physically, compared to Neanderthals, yes, we were at a disadvantage. Neanderthals had thicker bones, more muscle mass, and barrel-shaped chests built for cold climates. Studies of Neanderthal skeletons show healed fractures and injuries that suggest they regularly got into extremely violent encounters with large animals and survived them. These were tough, cold-adapted, physical beings. Early Homo sapiens had lighter skeletons and narrower frames. But there is something more alarming. A 2023 paper published in the journal Science by Wangji Hu and colleagues analyzed ancient DNA and found that somewhere around 930,000 years ago, the ancestral population of modern humans collapsed to roughly 1,280 breeding individuals. That is almost extinction. We nearly disappeared before we even became recognizable as a species. What saved us, it seems, was not physical strength. It was something happening in the brain, specifically in the prefrontal cortex, which handles planning, language, and social reasoning. Our skulls became rounder and higher domed around this time. That shape change corresponds to an expansion of the frontal and parietal lobes. We were not the strongest, but we were developing something that would eventually matter far more. If you're watching this video, cheer up. Probably we conquered the Stone Age while others couldn't, so go out and show everyone how powerful you really are. But the strongest competitor we had was Neanderthals, who also made it to the very last. Were we really the killers of them and other human species? Let us freeze the planet at 100,000 years ago and look at what our species was actually doing. In Africa, early Homo sapiens were living in small hunter-gatherer groups. We know from excavations at Blombo's cave in South Africa, led by archaeologist Christopher Hinchelwood, that by around 75,000 years ago, they were making beads from snail shells, engraving geometric patterns on ochre, and apparently mixing paint in abalone shells. These are the earliest signs of symbolic behavior anywhere in the fossil record. Meanwhile, in Europe and Western Asia, Neanderthals were doing remarkably well. A 2016 study published in Nature by Marie Soresi and colleagues documented stone ring structures built deep inside Bruniquel Cave in France, dated to 175,000 years ago, made entirely by Neanderthals, long before Homo sapiens arrived in Europe. They controlled fire. They hunted large game with hafted spears, meaning spears where stone tips were attached to wooden shafts using tree bark tar they manufactured themselves, and they buried their dead, who were the most advanced species at the time. At 100,000 years ago, if you were just measuring survival success, the answer is probably Neanderthals. They had been living in Ice Age Europe for 300,000 years and had completely solved the problems of their environment. If you looked at a Neanderthal toolkit from 300,000 years ago and one from 50,000 years ago, they looked almost identical. Their technology changed very slowly. By contrast, Homo sapiens had a massive capacity for rapid innovation. Once we started developing art, complex language, and multi-component tools, our technology exploded exponentially. In the time it took a Neanderthal to slightly improve a stone axe, Homo sapiens went from throwing spears to building permanent farming civilizations. Did we kill Neanderthals? Here is the uncomfortable part. The timeline of Homo sapiens spreading across the world matches almost perfectly with the disappearance of every other human species. We showed up in Europe. Neanderthals vanished within a few thousand years. We reached the islands of Southeast Asia. The remaining Homo erectus and Homo floresiensis populations disappeared. The pattern is consistent everywhere. But it probably was not a direct extermination campaign in most cases. It was more likely a slow process of competition. We hunted the same animals, gathered the same plants, and used the same caves and shelters. We just did it slightly more efficiently, with larger, more coordinated groups, with better tools that kept improving, with the ability to plan further ahead. You don't need to kill another species to cause its extinction. You just need to be slightly better at surviving in the same space over a few hundred or a few thousand years. Their populations shrank. Their gene pools narrowed. Climate shifts added pressure on top of that. And then they were gone. What did we do differently that no other species managed? 3 things. First, language complex enough to pass detailed knowledge across generations, not just communicating about immediate danger, but things like last winter, the mammoths went south when the river froze at a certain bend. Remember this and teach it to your children. Second, the ability to cooperate with strangers. Third, cumulative culture. Each generation inherited everything the previous generation had figured out and added to it. What would the world look like if other species survived? What if they were still alive? Do they have rights? Can they own property? Can they vote? Did they coexist or did we enslave them? And it probably would not have been peaceful. History shows pretty clearly what happens when one group of humans encounters another that is slightly different and competing for the same resources. We are the last humans. Every war, every religion, every act of kindness, and every atrocity, all of it is the product of one species that almost went extinct 1,000,000 years ago, that outlasted everyone else. Whether that is inspiring or terrifying probably depends on the day you're having. Anyways, this was my first video of the channel. If you're still here, maybe you have something to do with other humans' extinction. Subscribe to me. I won't tell anyone, and the next video will be how ancient humans planned family. Until then, bye.